everyone. This is Crypto and Cocktails, the official 107capital podcast. My name, as always, is Tyler, and this is your man of the hour,
timnihill.
So we want to do something, pretty similar to last week, but obviously, still keeping up with that little different spin we've been doing recently. Tonight we're doing something pretty basic as far as the drinks go. This right here is a classic dirty martini.
Fantastic.
Because there's something a little dirty about how private banks work.
And bankers in general.
Yep. That's what we're going to be talking about today, so I figured the drink should be on theme.
Yeah, so save your dollar because, it's beneficial to you.
Cheers.
Oh, it's perfect. Love it.
Wow. Love that olive taste.
Olive's great.
Yeah.
I didn't drink martinis until I started to like olives. And then when I added olives into a martini that's vodka based, I don't do a lot of gin. Because gin always tasted like pine trees to me.
That's if gin tastes like anything.
Right. So then I kind of got turned on to them, and they were my go-to drink.
Yep. No, I'm definitely a martini.
Clean, dirty, neat. You can play the whole spectrum.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely a martini guy myself. I got that from my mom. She loves martinis, and it came down a generation. But
so funny.
No, so I guess what we're going to be talking about today is, kind of what I said earlier, because, there is something a little dirty about how private banks really work. Like you said, it's not just private banks, but like if you've ever felt, you weren't getting the full story from your advisor, it's like we said last time, it's because you weren't. Like to 99% of people who call themselves advisors, you're not a client, you're inventory.
You're basically like a box on the shelf.
You're a number.
You're a number. Your finances are a number. You might as well be in an Amazon warehouse.
Yep.
And like when they refer to private banking, right, it's supposed to be the wealth management division that's an extension of a bank. So like, for example, I worked at Merrill Lynch for a year and a half, right, when I first left corporate to go off on my own. And I was more curious. So like Merrill Lynch was the powerhouse of the wealth management space for a long time, but when they absolutely collapsed in 2008, the distress call went out to Bank of America. And remember, Bank of America was the strongest bank in America at that time, and they had to absorb all the Merrill Lynch crap. So then it was like, okay, fodder, if you will, if that makes you feel better. But it was like, okay, so the strongest bank takes it on the chin, absorbs up the wealth management group. It no longer is wealth management and investing. It's now banking. It's glorified banking. You're just using the market for it, right? And as we talked about before, everyone's like, oh, I get 10 to 12% of my S&P 500 index fund. Well, yeah, I used to get that in my bank account when I was 10 years old with zero risk. So you're taking all the risk to buy the S&P 500 to earn your 10% a year. The S&P is just a banking instrument. It's not an investment. So yeah, you have to own it, right?
Yep.
But we've all been trained, inundated with information as to what, this stuff is. And really when you get into the private wealth side of things, as someone who's been inside the four walls of all of these firms, both as a part of them or in other capacities, you realize, like, what are you doing with your money? Because they don't give a crap about you, right? They really don't. They have their sales quotas that you have to hit quarter after quarter, month after month. You have to hit bonuses. So your job is to hit quotas, charge fees, and then pass the everyday management and accounts off to a junior advisor.
Yeah, exactly. The game...
it looks pretty. The seats are great. The conference rooms are nice. The cup of coffee is fantastic.
But looks can be deceiving.
Yeah,
the game is very much rigged, but, and this is the crux of it, we'll get to this as well, only if you keep playing it their way.
Well, if you're within their system, you're always going to be playing it their way. And the geniuses on the market that have really done the best at packaging this stuff up to get people to buy into it long term Because remember, their entire model is making money off of your money. So they don't want to see a dollar go out the door, right? And they come up with some really, really creative ways to do it. Like Vanguard sells low-cost investing. Well, if you're not paying for something, then you're the product, right? It's not free. So if you're sitting there and you're looking at your stuff and you're like, wait, I really have to think about this, because Schwab, Fidelity, and Vanguard are the best in the business at doing this, at getting people to believe long-term that they should keep their money at these shops, right? Because we're acting in your best interest, while in fact you're a number on the spreadsheet and it's a revenue-based number and they're charging fees. And the longer your money is sticky and stays there without you questioning it, because they do an amazing job behind marketing and language and the way that communications reach your desk, the entire thing, it's all a behavioral finance system that was really created and proliferated by Thaler out of the University of Chicago on how to get people to mindlessly hand over their money for the rest of their lives. And then mindlessly hand over the next generation's money for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. So do you wanna kind of break that down and talk about that a little bit? Like, private banks, they build trust by really by selling prestige. Like, but the real model, as you just said, is asset captivity. They need your AUM to feed their system. You know, the pitch is really concierge service. So I guess, sort of walk us through what exactly is concierge service, that model, how does that work? How do you see it in practice?
Yeah, I mean, so if you stand inside of a bank, right? And I had a friend of mine that Santander Bank in Boston wanted to build their financial planning program and get out of the annuity sales stuff and get into more of the planning side. So they hired a bunch of us to try to come in and change the system, but you can't do it. The compensation model is not aligned. And then for someone like me, I was like, dude, every day I step into this branch or this bank, I put my licenses and my life at more risk. So eventually I just walked. I'm like, I got to get out of here. It's too risky. Because what they want you to do, because you are on a commission system. So what they offer is they say, hey, once your assets hit a certain level, we give you a private banker. Well, yeah, great. Or they call them a VP, whatever, but they're still a banker. So if you go back to the 70s and 80s and 60s, 70s and 80s, when everyone believed in their banker, right? And they would just hand money over, and the banker would make you feel safe. They had the most boring job in the world and all that other good stuff. And if you really want a good history of this, just watch the movie The Big Short. So the long and short of it is, they're like, oh, we have experts that take care of maybe your estate planning, maybe your tax planning, maybe your lending, all of this stuff. It's like this hub and spoke model where we have all of these experts, but all these experts are paid commissions to sell you whatever prepackaged products on the platform. And it has nothing to do with what's good for you and what's not. And then if you take it a step further and realize that, like a lot of these programs, especially on the investment management side, insurance side, long-term care, annuities, etc., in order to get listed on these platforms with Merrill, Ed Jones, Wells Fargo, Schwab, etc., there are people like me that work for investment firms that have to cut 7- and 8-figure checks, right? Oh, we're no transaction fee. Well, where do you think that money's coming from? We're paying a check to cover the transaction cost to sell our ETFs on that platform because it's the competitive thing to do, but we're wrapping the vehicles with revenue sharing behind the scenes that the public can't see because they're not the ones diving into the 130-page prospectus.
Yeah, and they wrap you in, and they wrap you in, and they wrap you in.
Wrapping, and then they have these glorified charts with these pictures and graphs of what your future life is going to be, and none of them are accurate. And the mathematics behind them, I studied engineering at one of the top schools in the world. It's all bogus math.
Go Jackets.
Go Jackets. It's bogus math. So it's an entire marketing system made to mentally put people in a place of comfort, proliferated by behavioral finance. So investment management and private bank firms can have full range to everybody's assets with zero liability, by the way. Because at the end of the day, when it blows up in that world, their documents are so good where they get off the hook. They're off the hook. Unless it's something insanely egregious, they're off the hook. Right? And even when it's insanely egregious, we went through this in 2008. What happened to all the executives at like Bear Stearns and Lehman? They walked away with hundreds of millions of dollars. But everyone that was an investor, what happened to you? I got screwed.
Except for one schmuck from Credit Suisse. They blamed everything on him.
They find a fall guy. Like Jamie Dimon, if you do the research on it, and there was a really good book that talks about this, long-term capital management, and it was called like The Smartest Guys in the Room. He has the best setup of anyone. Like he's untouchable because he always has a fall guy. Right? So when you see the inner workings for yourself with your own eyes, you just kind of realize what nonsense it is. And then as someone like me who spent years consulting across the country and speaking in front of tens of thousands of advisors and private bankers and wealth managers across the country, I mean, I can count on one hand maybe how many people I would even consider giving my money to.
Yeah.
So,
Because it's very simply like the higher your balance is, with any of these organizations or any of these entities, the harder it is to leave. Like that's not advice; it's a trap.
it is a trap.
It's very smart. They make a lot of money with it, but it's a trap.
Any time that you go to them to take your money out, they come up with something new to hook you in. Right? I mean, Fidelity's 401k desk is infamous for this, because you would call their desk, I want to roll my money out. They're so good behind the scenes with their scripts at keeping your money there, right? Like, we work with people all the time that roll their money over. Why should a rollover take 10 weeks? Ask yourself that question. Why is my money taking 10 weeks to get to the account I wanted to get to?
But if you decide to cancel, then it's like it never happened. The whole process never started.
Right. So they lull you into sleep to the point where you're like, forget about it, it's too much work. And they continue to charge fees, gather assets, and make money off you. Your inventory. The 401k industry is 100% inventory for target date funds and mutual funds. No one ever asks the question. They're like, oh, I'm saving on my taxes. No, you're not. You're leveraging up your tax liability and then kicking it to a point in time where you don't have enough money to cover it.
Yeah, and that's a big thing as well. Like with all the scripts and whatnot, like the system doesn't reward bankers or managers or whatever you want to call them for loyalty to you, the client, who makes the money for that, firm.
All one revenue share and one big revenue play. It's about money.
Yeah, it rewards loyalty to the employer, first and foremost.
The platform.
Yeah.
So if you have a legacy platform that was built like a Schwab or Fidelity, and I give Abby Johnson credit because she's actually pretty good out there with what she tries to do.
Who's she?
She's the head of Fidelity.
Ah.
Took over for, I think, her grandfather. But there's still some people out there that really understand the dynamics of it and want to keep their firm in a position where it's not legacy, right? Like, when you get to the point where you're legacy, you're no longer working with and for your clients anymore. You're just protecting your platform. And that's what the Schwabs, the Wells Fargos, the Merrills, the Ed Joneses, the Ray J's of the world, they're all becoming legacy systems. So it's about, hey, look at these nice little prepackaged, portfolios we have. Look at these products that we sell. Look at, this 80-page financial report and forecasting report. It looks pretty because it has a lot of graphs and colors. It's all behavioral finance meant to lull people to sleep.
Behavioral
And
finance.
I learned this the hard way when I was in the 401k space. We were doing stuff that no one in the country was doing.
Yeah, do you want to talk about 401ks and how crazy those are?
No, I'm going to save that for later because that's on its own.
Oh boy.
If you knew what I knew, and I built the industry, I was the first to market being an ERISA fiduciary in this country and bringing that to market. If you knew what I knew, you would run as far away from tax-deferred accounts and 401ks because they're revenue machines. Go to ICI.org and look at the amount of money that's defaulted into target date funds. And when you see the trillions and trillions of dollars, and you understand that these financial companies are making anywhere from 0.25% to 1.5% to 2% on that amount of money with zero liability, you now understand what your 401k is.
Yep, and we'll link that in the description as well so you can see for yourself. It's insane.
Right, but the problem is it's front and center. And it's one of those things where people get so comfortable with it that until something happens that's catastrophic, they don't do anything about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And
They think, oh, my money's being managed, my money's being taken care of, this all is too confusing.
oh, I'm up 20%, the S&P's up 20% this year. No, you're not. You're flat. You're flat because for every percent that, we looked at it and saw a stat yesterday, the S&P 500 is up 10% this year. Well, guess what? The U.S. dollar is down 10%.
So what does
Your
that
money
even...
is directly, people's entire financial lives across this country are tied to Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve Bank. Oh, we're going to cut rates. Great, market goes up. We print more money. Oh, we're not going to cut anymore. Market goes down. See the picture? It's not capitalism. We're not in a free market system. So...
They call it a mixed market, mixed economy.
Right. Last time I looked, this was the United States of America. We're not here to be a mixed economy. We're not here to be anything but free market.
It's not even an America thing, it's a human thing. I mean, this goes for any country.
It's a desire for the illusion of security. It's really weird.
People will always cede their freedom if it means they feel safe and sound and can sleep tight.
But if you're safe and sound, you're never free.
Exactly.
Founding fathers understood this. But the long and the short of it is you have this massive system that everybody's become accustomed to, and you had an entire generation where, I'm sorry, but if you're a baby boomer and you don't have 7 figures, you really messed up bad. Like, it was the easiest time to make money.
Just buy a house.
Buy a house. Put your money in a 401k. It all went up for 50 years.
Yeah. It's like I said in the previous episode, you know, you just gotta pull up your bootstraps.
Yeah, right. Pull up your bootstraps.
Hardworking Americans.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, like, a lot of these platforms are built on conflicted advice.
Just go knock on the desk of the person who the place you're trying to apply for a job for. They totally won't just kick you out and refer you to a website that'll never respond to you. They'll just give you the job immediately. You just gotta pull up your bootstraps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pull up your bootstraps. But the thing is, like, when you understand what this is, and I'm not saying good, bad, or different, right? Some people want that. It's a feeling of security. It's fine, it works for you. But other people that are hyper aware, especially today, when you get into Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen Z, and the younger generations, and they're looking at what's going on. Oh, I have to graduate college. Look at your sister. She's going to Villanova. $90,000 a year to be a nurse. Are you out of your mind?
It's a good school, though. I'm very proud of her.
It ain't worth $90,000 a year.
That's true.
What are you going to make as a nurse getting out?
Probably not nearly enough to pay that off.
Exactly. You're trapped. The whole system got hijacked by bankers, It's all presented in terms of private wealth to make you fall asleep, and then they bury your children with college loans.
My stepbrother, I mean, he had, he went to a really good school for engineering, very similar to you.
Yeah.
And he had a mountain of debt, but, he got really lucky. And I think I mentioned this in a previous episode that now he's working at Boston Dynamics. Like, he's building the robots that you see on TV. He is part of the team that actually is physically building those in the studios and everything. So he got lucky, but most people are not that lucky, and most people have just as much, if not more, debt than he does.
Yeah, and like you just said, has more debt than most people. What are we doing here? Everyone's been lulled to sleep, and it's all behavioral finance.
Yeah.
How to make people sleep and hand their money over.
That's another episode as well. We got to talk about behavioral finance. That's a whole other can of worms.
And trust me, man, you have no idea the amount of money the financial services industry, spends on this. They literally have people come in and research the nuanced words in order to trick people's brains into falling into it.
Exactly.
My only question is, what does that advisor or private wealth person do with their own money? And how much are they charging in fees? And more importantly, what's it based on?
I mean, we mentioned it, last week. I think 91% of advisors don't have any alternatives.
Well, it's not just alternatives, but it's assets under management fees.
Yeah.
So we have a hybrid model, right? And we have some commissions we earned. It's mostly insurance because there's right now really no other way to do it. We don't do annuities, but if we did, we do mostly, or if not all, fee-based. You could do asset under management fees, which, that's fine, but it doesn't cover the spectrum of what we do.
Yeah.
But you have to think about this. So you have someone like Ken Fisher goes up there and says, we're a fiduciary and we're on your side.
You mentioned this last episode too. You keep coming back to Ken Fisher.
Can't stop it because they're not fiduciaries. Their entire program is built on conflict. The problem is when people like myself and others brought this to the market, the lawyers scrambled at the big houses to say, one, the independents are about to crush us and put us out of business. And then two, how can we say we're fiduciaries but have a ton of disclosures so we could get all our fees and revenue sharing behind the scenes?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a sales tactic.
Yep. And I think we mentioned it briefly on a previous episode, but I guess we can kind of go into this as well because this is one of the really important parts is, this whole table of entrapment, this whole table of so-called concierge service, this whole table of, predatory banking activity that all of these people and all of these entities do, family offices, with how quickly they've come up in the past few years and how burgeoning that sector is, they're totally restructuring the table.
Yeah, we're definitely restructuring the table. And the thing about it is, we're not restructuring it in a way where... Oh, let me step back from that. So, we're restructuring it in a way that it was originally structured before our industry was hijacked. And the entire industry was hijacked in 2008. We never fixed the problems, and then governments came in, banks got bailed out, and all that stuff. But the thing is, people are now, especially younger generations, they're becoming so aware of the game now, and they're choosing not to participate. And that's why everyone's so against crypto, is because somebody came along and said, F this crap, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not a slave to you as a banker. I love the show Billions.
Oh my God.
Go watch Bobby Axelrod's monologue to Wags talking about wanting to be a bank and why. And that tells you everything you need to know. And then when you extrapolate the fact that there are 300 plus million people taught that banks are safe and they should blindly hand their money over every paycheck, you now see the system. You now see the process of what works for the firms that people quote unquote go against. But at the same time, by participating and voting for it, you're still participating and supporting it.
Yeah, and I mean, especially,
And trust me, I don't think banks should go away. I think they should return to how they were in the 80s. If my clients got 10% in a bank with their safe money, it would make my job so much better.
Yeah, I mean, especially...
I want that.
Yeah, like, especially with, how things are going, at the time we're recording, like, with how things are going in the world around us. I mean, people were already starting to wake up, I feel, economically, but now it's, a more general sort of awakenness that we're starting to see, especially with, what's going on in Iran and all that stuff. Like, there are people who supported, for example, the president very religiously who are now turning against him, like Tucker Carlson and, Marjorie Taylor Greene, like you never thought would. And, you can say, because at the end of the day, politics is just drama, it's just theater, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but it's emblematic of the fact that, like, what's going on right now is a great example of how people are starting to wake up in the broader sense, not even just an economical sense anymore, but in the broader sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's indicative of, I always said, and I found in my studies of history, and I'm a history nut. Every book I could get my hands on, I rip through it, and within like 5 pages I could tell if a book is complete nonsense or not, right?
Same.
If you look at the history of governments, it's all about money, right? Like, I have a friend that his father used to say, find the money trail and you find a man's motivation.
Yeah.
Right?
I've heard that before.
This has nothing to do with anything more than it's money related. And that's where you get this whole community of Bitcoiners, for example, that are on the lead front of the enough is enough in this world. Like, this is all nonsense. It's unnecessary. But you realize that it is all necessary because of the banking systems across the world. So the point is, if you're someone out there that's against bankers and banking and big corporations, then why are you still participating? You have it out now. It's called Digital Assets, Bitcoin, and Crypto. And the private wealth guys and gals are never going to sell you that because it doesn't pay for their nice mahogany desk and their window with a view over some river.
I'm gonna do, I guess, something that's almost becoming a segment. I might want to put in a little graphic at some point, maybe even Tyler's wrestling tie-in, because...
Oh, no.
because there's also a great example there. I mean, I always say, and again, I'll say it 1,000 times, I want to do an episode on everything is wrestling. Wrestling is a microcosm of our society, but to tie it into what you were saying, like, with the way that, I'll use WWE as an example, the way that their corporate management, their corporate management has seriously been neglecting a lot of talents that people want to see get pushed and get over. Like, you won't know who this is, but like Karrion Kross, for example, any Killer Kross fans out there, people like him. I mean, there's just a lot of talents that people want to see get pushed and get over. LA Knight is another big one, but because they don't fit neatly into the script, into the way the system is, the way the pen is being used to write the story, so to speak, because it's not like they got over organically. The company didn't pick them.
Yeah.
They're just being benched. They're not being pushed.
Right. And that's why people like me that are out there don't work corporate anymore. We're not part of the script. It's not, you can't put someone like me, and I'm not just the only one. There's a massive amount of people now that are here with this mentality that we're not here to push a script. We're not pushing this for someone else's convenience. We're not pushing this stuff to support some big thing that we're like is to us a waste of time. Right? I'm in the business of I would say mindset, awareness, and financial freedom. And that doesn't fit in the private wealth world.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, like, here at 10-7, I mean, I would say most family offices, but definitely here at 10-7 at least, like, you know, we run on a very open architecture in the real sense, like no proprietary funds, you know, no forced product placement, except for wrestling. I will always plug wrestling.
I don't think he's sponsored, just from a disclosure perspective.
No, I wish I was. And no Wall Street leash, you know.
No, but I mean, here's how convenient the system is on the private wealth side. So I had a friend of mine a long time ago, and he got divorced, and he went into the private wealth side. He was an independent, owed an arm and a leg through his divorce to his ex, and had to sell his practice. And he went to one of the larger firms, sold it out, and, you know, took the paycheck, sent half of it to his ex, kept the other half, whatever. And so he had built a really, really solid book of clientele. And I went to see him one day. We were just hanging out. We kind of saw each other in a hall outside of Boston. And it had been a while since we've seen each other. And I'm like, what are you up to these days? He goes, this is it, man. I sit in my office, come in at 10, leave at 2 or 3. I don't do anything. He didn't have to, because his business he built on his own already met the minimum requirements for the private wealth side of things. But literally every day he just sat there.
And it sounds...
Junior would take calls, run the portfolios, run the financial plans. You had the business assistant doing whatever that person does. And that's all he did. He just sat in an office.
Yeah, and it sounds great until you actually do it, and then you realize how mind-numbing and monotonous it is.
Yeah, but the problem in that world, and I used to talk with my friends all the time about this, because, all right, so when you're on the inside of the financial services industry and you're working higher up and you're in sales and even the relationship management side and the executive side, the problem is people get married to the paycheck. All of a sudden you're making $400,000 and $500,000 a year, and you actually don't really have to do much anymore. It takes away some of that survival instinct, or the want to do anything else, because you're not doing anything. You're just sitting around, hanging out, making a ton of money. And I just think that in our world, twofold, you could change it, right? That's fine if you want to live in that world, but don't call yourself a private wealth advisor. Call yourself a banker. I'm a wealth banker. Here's what we do. We make it 10% a year. It's easy. And you know what? For those people, they probably should be paid half of what they're paid. Because all they're doing is picking up phones and giving you some jargon that comes from the home office somewhere across the country. And
if it's even in the country.
If it's great, you're going to feel great. When it's bad, they're going to give you 3 reasons why you shouldn't do everything or do anything. And don't move your money. It'll come back. It always does. You know, ride the course or stay the course. That
Diversify.
Type of jazz. Diversify. You know, it's the same on tax planning. What do you do for tax planning? Well, we offset it with losses. Well, why do I have losses in the first place? Right?
Why are you tolerating losses in my account? Aren't you supposed to prevent loss?
Right, and the other thing, because you don't have nuanced people that understand things, is you go to these shops, like we get calls. My advisor and private wealth guy triggered a $500,000 gain this year, and I have to pay 20% on taxes for it. Well, why did he do that? because he doesn't know any better. He's not a finance guy. He's a sales guy or gal.
He's not a financial professional.
They're not financial professionals. They're salespeople.
And the firms make them look like they're financial professionals.
And they hide it all under the CFP designation, the all these different CHFCs and all this other stuff.
Yep.
They have these titles and designations, but it's not like, the CFP used to mean something. Being a CPA used to mean something, and those days are now over. And you're now at a crux point, and this is why this is important, is you're at the era of where this collapses. And if you're sitting there with your money in this system 5 years from now, you're going to be sitting at your dinner table with a big fat scotch or a fat martini being like, what was I thinking?
Exactly. And that's,
you got complacent.
Yeah, and again, that's where, family offices are coming in. That's where, we're going back to the way banking was in the 80s, the way wealth management was in the 80s.
Yeah, we're here to make money, man.
Like, we design capital stacks where you, the client...
Capital stack.
Like where you, the client, sit at the top of the value chain, not the bottom. You own strategy, you own data, you own custody, timing, all of that.
Yeah.
You mentioned freedom earlier. You mentioned like we're in the business of financial freedom. We're architects of freedom. Family offices are architects of freedom.
That's a good one. I like that one. Yeah, I agree.
Yep. So
yeah, it's life and finance without borders, boundaries, and limitations. I will say this, kind of an announcement. I've been like Dr. Dre over the past couple months. I've been in the lab with the pen and the pad.
Oh boy,
I gotta say it, man. I still remember when I bought Dr. Dre Chronic, the album, and I came from a family hated rap. But I used to commute back and forth on public city buses to school and high school. And I always had a stopover it was basically the Main Street Mall in Buffalo, New York. And so this guy was selling bootlegger CDs, or cassettes, not CDs. And the first one I bought for myself, I bought two. I bought Cypress Hill Black Sunday. And then I bought Dre Day Chronic, or Dr. Dre Chronic. And it was like, I put it in and the guy recorded them backwards. Right? And that used to be the days where people would go in with like video cameras and bootleg movies and all that stuff. So I had to flip to side B, rewind it, and then all of a sudden, welcome to Death Row. And I was like immediately hooked.
Yep.
So still a huge Dre fan.
Is he your favorite rapper, would you say?
Oh, that's so hard. I'd have to think about that one. Probably not.
You always play Biggie a lot. I always thought of Biggie as your favorite. You play him a lot.
I do like Biggie. There's so many, though. My favorite group is still to this day Outkast. And then I just have a slew of independent artists that I really, really like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my favorite song is by Pete Rock and CL Smooth, Troy. They Reminisce Over You.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that sets my mind in a way that I really, really get hyper-focused on things. But what I'm saying with people is this whole private banking system that's part of this theme that we're talking about, it is going away. We're stepping into a new generation of family office, but decentralized, autonomous organizations that rest as your family, where your finances, your family are decentralized, autonomous.
And where you are sovereign.
And you're sovereign. This is about financial sovereignty. The whole point of it is, even if you're an advisor, you can read our stuff and it's going to show you, wait, I need to pivot and change.
You need to become an advisor, not a salesperson.
It's not even that. It's, I followed the herd, right? Because even being a fee-based advisor came out of getting away from commission-based sales. it was meant to be a more fiduciary friendly play, less revenue sharing, less behind the scenes type of stuff. No high commissions, no high fees. But even that gets hijacked, right? Jim Collins wrote a book called From Good to Great, and he says every idea becomes a revolution, turns into a business, and then ends up a racket. And that's what AUM-based fee planners have become. They're now the racket. So family office down market, here's your idea, we're starting the revolution. Eventually, it'll all turn into a business and probably end up a racket, and then we'll go reinvent it. But at least you're on the beginning of this one if you missed the last one.
Exactly. And, it boils down to, if you're ready to stop being inventory and start being sovereign, join us. Join the 10-7 family. I'll put a link in the description. Visit tensevencapital.co. Take your seat back at the table.
Yeah, and even if you want us to take a look and audit your finances for you, we're happy to do it. Happy to do it. Happy to at least have a conversation. Send us a note through our website. If it's not a waste of your time. And I promise you, we'll bring you ideas that you're probably not even looking at, or the current people you are working with aren't looking at either. And we have a lot of clients of ours that we work side by side with their private wealth guide, just because we do things that they won't. And that's cool too. We'll respect the relationship, but we're more about helping people and families build this next generation of wealth. And then instead of taking it 2 to 3 generations, stretching it 7 to 10.
Exactly. So I think that's a good place to leave off. If you don't have anything else to say.
Not today.
Good place to bookend it. Definitely be sure to check it out.
Thank you much.
Like I said, we'll put a link in the description. But yeah, as always, this has been Crypto and Cocktails. I am Tyler.
Timnihill.
And hope to see you soon.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers indeed. Cheers to financial freedom.
Love it.